Searching for a God to love. Is that a God we find in the Bible? Is that a kind of God understood in society today? How many people have been put off God because of a distorted picture? Here to discuss those issues and hopefully provide a little bit of direction and answers is Dr. Chris Blake. Dr. Blake is a professor of English literature and communication at Union College in Lincoln, Nebraska. And with him is Pastor Patrick Johnson of the Newbold Seventh Adventist Church in Binfield, Berkshire. Today's subject is the center of existence. Chris, you wrote a book about searching for a God to love. Why did you write a book about it?
In my experience, so many people don't believe in a God that really I don't believe in either. They say, I don't believe in God. I ask them what kind of God they don't believe in, and I say, yeah, I don't believe in that God either. And I call them believing unbelievers, people who believe in God but don't believe what they've heard about God. It's kind of a refreshing dialogue to enter into at that time.
Patrick, is that something you also encounter as a pastor, that people have different views and different pictures of God that seems a little bit off?
Yeah, I think that's definitely my experience. Meeting many different people, it's incredible how many different views people actually have of God. And you kind of wonder, is it all coming from the same Bible or from the same source? And it's not, actually, because people have their views of God coming from all kinds of different philosophies. Yeah. And I think that's why there is so much confusion about who God is, because we kind of tend to take ingredients from all over the place, and this then is the God that we think exists, and then we reject because we don't like that recipe of God or whatever it is. So yeah, it's almost as if as many different people as there are different gods too.
Yeah, and we tend to create God in our own image as well.
Yeah.
But it's nice, isn't it? You know, if I can do a super version of myself, and that would be God, that kind of means, you know, if I go to the Bible and I read that I as a human am created in the image of God, surely God must be just a better version of myself.
Yeah, and in the Bible, of course, you can get just about anything you want from it. You can shape it and twist it and direct it so that you can create anything from the Bible. So people quoting the Bible, before I was a Christian, and I became a Christian after university, I didn't care if somebody quoted the Bible. It didn't really matter to me. To me, what mattered was the experience, what I could see and smell and touch. And so finding a path, even the center of the Bible, I think, is a path to pursue, to figure out what it is in the Bible, because the Bible is a library. The Bible is 66 books. And so what do you find in this library that's a thread, a center, a direction?
But people will also argue that in the Bible you have different views of God. You have what is seen as a strict Old Testament God, which is the first part of the Bible. And then you have a more loving God. And then you have somebody called Jesus and the Holy Spirit. And, you know, for somebody who is not grown up Christian, it gets a little bit confusing. And where do you start? Where do I start searching for a God to love? And do I even want to start searching? Yeah. Patrick?
Oh, do you even want to start searching? Yeah, that's a good question. I think, you know, it's easy to get a surface view of what God is like. You know, we hear horror stories from, let's take the Bible, and you say, yep, that's the way God is. You just read one story, some people are killed, he's a horrible person. But you never get to know somebody by just viewing one little bit of what they've done. You know, if you ever come along and see me shouting at one of my children, you think, man, that's a horrible father. But you have no idea why. What's going on, what's the situation, what's the context. It could be that I'm shouting to pull them back from danger or something like that. So you've got to invest some time to get a broader picture, I think, if you want to find out about God.
Yeah, I tell a story just like that in the book, Searching for a God to Love, about a time when I pulled my child out of the street, and you know, if you had just seen that, you would see, you know, and gave him a pat on the backside. If you'd just seen it, you would see, you know, the Father smote the Son.
Yes.
And that would be it.
Yeah.
And that's why the Old or Original Testament, I'm so thankful that there is another picture that comes out, and that is the picture of Jesus, which is the clearest view of God and the center of existence in so many ways.
But I will admit, though, you know, if you were to, let's say, just read that first part of the Bible, the Old Testament, the original Testament you mentioned, it does give us some challenges. I will admit that. But it's an interesting discipline to try and say, now, if God is love, what's going on here?
Yeah.
That is an interesting discipline to just try throughout the Bible.
Yeah.
And it can give you some good challenges.
But if I've never encountered the concept that God can be love, if I've only encountered that God is somebody who punishes me and rewards me if I've been good, how can I even begin to even ask questions about a God of love?
Well, we're born seeking love. No, it's part of human existence. We're nourished by it. We're frustrated by it. We seek love, and really the question becomes, what sort of love? What sort of love is this? What sort of God would perpetrate these things? You know, when I started reading the Bible, I just put it down. I was aghast at the ethnic cleansings, at the rapes, the murders, all of this stuff is like a graphic novel. It was horrific. And then I got into reading the Gospels, and I got a different sense. And I also started to realize that God is a God who meets people where they are, that the audience was so vastly different from who I am now. And he would meet people where they are. Fortunately, that's the story again of Jesus, is meeting us where we are, that incarnational ministry.
And I think, you know, one of the things for me is that God's not afraid to get involved there. You can misunderstand, you know, if you think God's in the midst of all of this. And then you think, wow, what kind of a person could that be? But it really speaks volumes about him, that he's not afraid to get down to our level where we're at, to try to bring us up to where he wants us to be.
But it sounds a little bit like you're saying, Chris, here, that God changes according to what age we live in, that God changes according to where I am in life. How can God be constant, and how can God be if he keeps changing his mind? It's more than just putting on a new set of clothes, isn't it?
Yeah, I do. You know, the closer we get to truth, the closer we get to paradox. And God is unchanging, and God is always changing. You have that whole, you know, river analogy. You can't put your hand into the same river twice. It's a different river, and it's the same river at the same time. What came to my mind when I started studying God was, is God even a person, or is God a force? I mean, how do you know God is a person at all? But then when you look at all creation and what's behind creation and all of the decisions that have to be made in priorities, you recognize that there's a personality behind this, that there's a person with a personality. And to determine that, what a fascinating adventure that is.
And I'm interested to actually maybe ask, why did you even start searching? Why did you start searching? But that's something we'll probably, you know, come back to in a little while. Patrick, is God changing?
Well, I think I would agree with the paradox there, because God is the one constant in our ever-changing world. But in his interaction with us, he can be very different. The way he will deal with us can change, I think. And yet he is that true north, I guess is what you would call him. That the only thing that is true within the universe, I guess.
We talked about truth a little bit. We talked about searching. But how do I know that the God I'm looking for is the same God that you're looking for? And I think we'll just have a break here, and we'll come back continuing with these questions.
The themes and topics explored in this series are from Chris Blake's book, Searching for a God to Love. For more information on how to get your copy, please visit searchingforagodtolove.org.uk.
I wanted to learn English.
I wanted to do ministry.
To have a church for the people of the streets, the wounded, the rejected.
To get both a theological perspective but also a psychological perspective of what human beings are.
I wanted a more theological base and a more steady base, and not just opinions or things that I think about the Bible, but to know more.
It's being opening like a new world.
Welcome back as we continue the discussion on the center of existence here in our series, Searching for a God to Love. And Chris, you were talking earlier a little bit about, you were just alluding to that you started searching for God. Now, why did you do that?
I started because I felt a void in my life. You know, I felt a need. There's so many ways to cover up our need, our deep hunger for God. And I had been covering up for a long time, but I just felt this soul need for something more, something better, and searching for meaning, for purpose, having that purpose. I was thinking when Patrick was talking about different ways that God interacts with us, how I have two sons, and I would treat my two sons differently. I would interact with one son who tended to be more serious and would listen and just obey our first son, Yolanda's my first son. I would just say one thing to him, and that would be it. With my other son, not so much. You know, I'd have to come back and try some more creative ways to come at it. Now, I'm the same father, I'm the same person, but I'm interacting in these different ways. And in the Bible, what I find us doing is for example, we'll have somebody who doesn't work very hard, a slacker. And so God says in the Bible, work harder. And then we have somebody else who's a workaholic. They work too much. And so God says in the Bible to them, don't work so hard. Well, what happens is the slacker reads, don't work so hard. And the workaholic reads, work harder. So as Jesus says, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. That means hear what you should hear. Hear what really speaks to you and what your needs are.
Do you think there's a danger in that? Sorry.
I was going to ask the danger.
Because then then you can read it as you want to for yourself, and then you make it into all kinds of stuff, don't you?
Absolutely, absolutely. There is a danger.
And wouldn't that also add into us, again, making maybe God so small that we do a reflection of ourselves if we only read what we want to read, if we only listen to what we want to listen to that suits us. And that is the argument that I hear a lot of times. You only want a loving God because you don't like a God that puts down the hard line. But that's also in the Bible. That's also one of God's characters, that he's a hardliner. He doesn't want you to mess around. How do I marry these different concepts of God? Because if God is the same, how do I know what God wants to tell me?
Right. Yeah. And those are tough questions, of course. How do you know anything? The whole nature of knowing is fraught with controversy. But how do you know, basically, that this chair will support us as we're sitting here, is through experience. You know through experience. I could stand apart and say, I think that chair will support me. But how do I know? I'm sitting in it. I recognize this now. The other part of this is love is not always fuzzy and warm.
No.
You know, love is sometimes saying, you know, is sometimes yanking my child out of the street. Love is sometimes saying, no, you need to stop doing that for everyone's good. Love is also allowing us to have our way. And that, I'm going to be getting to that later, is one of the essences of suffering on our planet. But the wrath of God is actually, it says in Romans 1, God allows us to have our way. That's the wrath of God. And that's also the love of God. Once again, that paradox, that love is there as well.
I think also one of the things we need to throw into the mix is the idea of searching for God, which I think is it's a good term. The only thing is, it's as if we are the active one looking for God who is, you know, static there. But actually, we wouldn't even be searching for him if he hadn't revealed himself in some way. So he's actually taken the first step. So it's as if we are discovering God. And in this discovery, there are lots of different facets, you know, and you discover this about him. Oh, okay. And then you discover something else, so that you don't think that you're searching for a fixed entity. You're discovering more and more about this being who is God. And that, I think, could open you up to thinking, all right, I don't have him in a box. I don't have it all there. I'm just discovering new sides to who he is.
That's right.
And with that kind of attitude, then maybe we won't be so put off by the surprises.
Yeah.
It'll be a good thing that we get in there as well.
Or get so arrogant.
Yes.
Sometimes that arrogance comes out, and that's very off-putting.
Yes.
The arrogance. A mystery is something that is not something that we don't know anything about. A mystery is something that we don't know everything about. And God is a mystery.
Yes, okay.
God is a mystery in that fashion. Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to just pick up on what you talk about, the arrogancy, because if I turn on my TV, if I listen to Christian speakers that I come across in the media, then, you know, I find them extremely arrogant.
Yes.
How they claim that God has revealed everything to them.
Right.
And that doesn't always sit with the God that I feel I have experienced. What do I do with that?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, am I just lacking in faith and lacking in my experience of searching God for God, or how do I resonate with that?
Yeah, you said lacking in faith, and faith is literally trust. That's what it is. What do we trust, and whom do we trust? When someone is talking to me and I get the sense that they're carrying God in their pocket, and they just pull God out to show you and then put God back, I'm pretty sure that this is not the God of all existence. This is a God, a very compartmentalized God at that point. And that does not make me trust this God or this vehicle, you know, this person that's talking about this God. When you get a sense of the vast mystery of God, and also that this God is a God of revelation, a God who wants us to love, you know, each other and to love God himself. And I'm a little bit, you know, even when I say himself, you know, we have this idea of male and female. God is personal, and yet I have some reservations about just always he, because of all the things that go with that.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Yet that God of revelation is a God who says, I want you to know me. Just as when you get married, you know, you can say, oh yes, I know my spouse entirely. Who says that? You know?
Well.
Yeah. Well.
Well.
Okay. Well, whoever says that, don't trust that person. Okay? Yeah, because you're always learning. You're always learning and growing.
Indeed.
And so.
And perhaps that is one of our challenges as humans, that maybe we come to a place where we stop wanting to learn, where we just stop everything and we kind of box ourselves in.
Yeah.
And what does that do to us in our experiencing of God?
Yeah, I think that's where the limits come in, isn't it? You know, I read a little book one time called "Your God is Too Small," and that's often the case for us, isn't it? That we think, now I've got him, now I understand everything about God.
Right.
And the thing is, we will never do that. God is always so much bigger than us. So what we've got to think is, what has he shown me? What more can I learn about him? Because we'll always be learning about him. But our thing as humans is always to box people up and box things in so that we've got it under control. I know it now. And maybe we feel comfortable with it.
Check off.
That. Exactly.
Yes,
but you can never feel comfortable with God because he's going to be always bursting out of whatever boundaries you put on him. And I think that's what makes it exciting.
But Patrick, I don't like to be surprised. I like to live a safe life. I don't want a God of surprises me all the time, because how do I know that I can trust him?
But you do like surprises. We all do. You would not want everything all laid out for you. We seek surprises in everything that we do. That's why we read newspaper. That's why we go surfing or skydiving. Those of us who do that, you know. That's why we go to the theater. That's why we read novels. We are seeking surprise, and the wonder is that this God also seeks surprises. You know, that this God that we can love is a God who nurtures that surprise, who has created us for surprise and wonder and nourishing experiences that open our eyes and say, oh. And we know that because you get out in nature and you say, oh, wow. That wow, that awe experience. And then we sense we're in the presence of God. It is, by the way, a God who keeps us alive. Life is a gift, the center of existence. I cannot generate, nor can any of us, our next heartbeat, our next breath. I can't do it. It is a gift. And so to acknowledge the gift and get beyond that whole stereotypical Mother Nature, you know, is Mother Nature a being? If so, then it's another name for God. But God is this being, this person, this creator, this lover of ours. Wow. Then it gets exciting.
Yes.
Then it gets exciting. Yeah.
But do you think that all this other stuff, all the gods or God things that we encounter in media and around us, do you think that actually, instead of bringing us closer to God, starts sidetracking us from what is the center of existence? Patrick?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, it does, isn't it? And maybe part of the thing is this arrogance that we think, well, now that I have this angle on God, I know who he is. And so you have to listen to what I have now found as the truth, as if truth is something static. If truth is a being, which is God, then we'll ever be searching and learning more and more and more. So perhaps on our part as humans, we need a certain humility as we search for this God. And we find out something and discover and say, hey, look what I've discovered. And if we could just be open enough to perhaps take that from one another, maybe there'd be a little bit more peace and harmony between, well, different ways of thinking about God.
Yeah, the author Anne Lamott writes that the surest sign of God's mercy is the continued existence of his church. Because the very beings who are meant to represent God turn so many people away so often. And it's a tragedy, you know, when that happens. But what a wonder it is also when you get a community of people who are so unlike each other. You know, you got classical music lovers and rock music and rappers, and they're getting together and they believe politically different things, and they're working together in love, which is why Jesus says, by this all people will know that you are my disciples if you love one another as I have loved you. And that love is actually the center of existence. The center of existence is love. There is no other center. Nothing else matters. Nothing else lasts but that love. And it's a love that is deep and nourishing and surprising and radical and activist and purposeful. All those things come with it.
Patrick, any last thoughts on this eternal love being the center of existence?
No, I think, you know, if, as Chris says, love is really the center of what existence is about, then we're all searching for that very same existence. And that should really unite us. That should bring us together. We're all searching in the same direction. That would be a really radical thought if we could all take that with us. Because then we wouldn't be fighting against each other. We'd all be, well, we're on the same road to finding this love which is God.
And by radical, I mean getting to the root of things, you know, which is different from extremist. Radical is what we're about.
So getting to that center of existing understanding, that's it, getting to the root of understanding who God is, enables us actually to maybe reach out and grab that love that He extends to us that you talked about, Patrick. And I want to thank you today for joining me in this discussion, and we'll be exploring more at some other programs that we'll be sending. And I want to just remind you that you've been watching Searching for a God to Love, here today with the author Chris Blake and Pastor Patrick Johnson. I'm Kirsten Øster-Lundqvist, and I'm just really glad that you could join us today. I want to encourage you, if you have any feedback or any questions, to go to the website www.searchingforagodtolove.org.uk, and there you can continue dialoguing with us and seeing the resources and the books that Chris has been mentioning in this program. Thank you for watching.